For every woman who has ever been told, without words, that she does not belong. This is the dedication to a story called First Class by Anna Zanzaro, and it sets the stage for a journey of quiet strength and profound revelation. Alexis Monroe's first-class ticket to Heathrow sat in her inbox for 3 weeks. She'd opened the confirmation email late one night, alone in her apartment, a glass of wine breathing on the counter. She read the words, "First Class, Seat 2A, Heathrow," 4 times, then closed her laptop, pressing her palms flat on the cool granite, as if to keep herself earthbound. At 31, Alexis had built a data analytics consulting firm from a single contract and a borrowed desk in a WeWork in Atlanta. It was now a 12-person operation with offices in Atlanta and, as of last Tuesday's signed agreement, London. For 7 years, she had flown economy, crammed into middle seats, eating stale pretzels and sipping complimentary ginger ale. She'd done it without complaint, earning every dollar that made this ticket possible. Yet a small, tired part of her, the part that remembered growing up in a 2-bedroom house in Decatur with her mother working doubles at Piedmont Hospital, had braced for the purchase to feel fraudulent, like someone would ask for the money back. But no one did. The charge cleared. The ticket was hers. After that first night, she didn't flinch again. She printed the boarding pass on heavy cardstock, treating paper like it had weight, because weight meant real. She folded it into the front pocket of her caramel leather tote, a bag she'd eyed for 2 years before finally buying it from a Black-owned boutique in Buckhead. This was Alexis Monroe's way. She didn't rush. She waited until she was ready, until things were earned. Then she moved through the world as if she had always belonged. Hartsfield-Jackson at 6 a.m. was a particular kind of theater. The airport's bones were constant. The automated train humming, the shops selling Georgia pecans and Coca-Cola memorabilia. But the people changed like a stage reset. The 6 a.m. cast was mostly business people, moving through the airport with efficient, drama-free focus. Alexis moved among them, comfortable in tailored trousers, a silk blouse, and a cognac-colored blazer. Her natural hair, a soft cloud of coils, was gathered at her crown with a tortoiseshell clip. She wore small gold hoops and a thin bangle watch that had belonged to her grandmother, who had cleaned office buildings for 37 years, and once told Alexis, pressing both her hands between her own, "You are going to walk into rooms that don't know what to do with you. Walk in anyway." Alexis wore that watch on every flight. On this one, she'd put it on before she even showered. The British Airways first-class check-in line moved quickly. A smiling agent processed her passport and boarding pass, checked her single carry-on, and said with genuine warmth, "Miss Monroe, enjoy your flight. We'll take good care of you." Security was unremarkable. She walked to gate B7 with 20 minutes to spare, stopping for a cortado, strong, clean, no sugar. She sat by the window, watching a Delta plane push back against the early morning blue, the sky the color of old pewter. In 10 hours, she'd be in London, signing a lease on an office above a Georgian townhouse in Marylebone, taking her team to dinner at a restaurant she'd bookmarked 3 years ago when London was just an ambition. Sipping her cortado, she felt perfectly, completely content. When the pre-boarding announcement came for first class, Alexis stood, smoothed her blazer, and walked to the door. She handed over her boarding pass, 2A, window, first class. The agent scanned it and smiled. "Welcome aboard, Ms. Monroe." She stepped on to the jetway and did not look back. The British Airways cabin crew greeted her with a warmth she accepted graciously. Priya, a young flight attendant, showed her to her seat, a private pod along the window wall. It was deep charcoal gray, wide enough to cross her legs. Before her, a screen, a fold-flat tray, a side console with a reading light and USB port. "Can I take your bag, Miss Monroe?" Priya offered. "I've got it, thank you," Alexis replied. She stowed the tote herself, then settled into the seat, letting the leather receive her. The reality matched the anticipation. The seat wasn't just extravagant, it was private. The small walls created a world that was hers. No armrest negotiation, no careful arrangement of elbows, no performing smallness. She simply occupied the exact space she wanted. Priya returned with sparkling water and a warm towel. Alexis accepted both, pressing the towel briefly against her hands. She drew her notebook, a craft-covered moleskin filled with plans for the London office, and began to make notes, absorbed in the quiet pleasure of the work and the pale morning light filtering through the oval window. She didn't notice the boarding door open again behind her. She didn't notice the man who paused at the entrance to the first-class cabin, his eyes finding her and stopping. His name was Derek Whitmore, 53, heavy-set, with khaki slacks that had seen better decades and an untucked Oxford shirt. He carried a leather briefcase and a rolling carry-on, navigating with an entitlement that expected the aisle to adjust to him. He was booked in seat 3B, business class, premium enough to reassure him of his status. He'd flown business to London twice before, always with the comfortable certainty that everything here was intended for him and people like him. He paused at the entrance to first class, rows of pods. Seats 1A and 1B were empty. Seats 2B, across from 2A, held a white-haired man reading the Financial Times, and seat 2A was occupied by a young black woman writing in a notebook, her cognac blazer draped over the armrest. She had a flute of water beside her, completely at ease, as if the place was hers. Derek Whitmore looked at her for a long moment. Something shifted in him, a slow tightening of a spring he'd never examined. He looked at her the way people look at something in the wrong frame. He looked at her the way his father had looked at things, and his grandfather before that, an inherited gaze so familiar it lived in him like furniture. He didn't go to his seat in 3B. Instead, he turned and walked to the galley where Brenda Carmichael, a 51-year-old flight attendant with 26 years at British Airways, was arranging service items. She wore her seniority like confirmation, with a precise blonde bob and reading glasses perched on her head. Derek Whitmore stopped at the galley curtain, lowering his voice. "Excuse me, I think there's someone in the wrong seat up there." Brenda looked up. "Which seat?" 2A. "There's a young woman sitting there." He paused. She seemed, I don't think she's supposed to be there." Brenda Carmichael looked at him. She didn't ask how he knew or what he was basing this on. She didn't check the manifest. She looked at him and, like a flawed system, she believed him because of who was asking. "I'll take care of it," she said, then walked toward seat 2A with the brisk certainty of someone correcting an obvious mistake. Alexis was mid-sentence in her notes. "Office lead, confirm Marylebone lease signing Thurs a.m., Claire to arrange catering," when she sensed someone at the edge of her pod. She looked up. Brenda, a trim blonde with a practiced smile that didn't reach her eyes, stood with hands clasped. "I'm sorry to disturb you," Brenda said, though she didn't sound sorry. "Can I ask, what seat number are you in?" Alexis put her pen down. 2A. "And do you have your boarding pass?" "Of course." Alexis reached into her tote without hesitation, producing the heavy cardstock pass. She held it out. Brenda glanced at it, a flicker of eyes that didn't truly read. She didn't take it, didn't scan it. She tilted her head slightly, her smile still in place like a mask. "I think there may have been a mix-up with your seat assignment. If you'd like to gather your things, I can help you find your correct seat." The words were careful. The implication was not. A small, clean silence fell inside Alexis. She knew this silence. She'd lived 31 years in this country, experiencing it in college classrooms, conference rooms, and restaurants. It was the silence of being found incorrect, without evidence or reason. She breathed through it. She kept her voice steady, knowing that volume would be used against her. "I don't think there's been a mix-up," Alexis said. "That is my boarding pass, seat 2A, first class. You're welcome to scan it if you have a reader or to check the manifest." Brenda's smile tightened. "I understand that, but we've had a report that this seat may have been double-booked. I'd just like to sort it out. If you could come with me—" "I'm not going anywhere," Alexis stated, quietly, a fact, not a challenge. "I purchased this ticket. I have the boarding pass. If there's a question, the correct procedure is to check the manifest, which will confirm this seat belongs to me. I'd like you to do that." Brenda's smile vanished, replaced with irritation. "Ma'am," Brenda said, the word a door closing, "I need to ask you to lower your voice." "I haven't raised it. Passengers in first class are entitled to a peaceful experience, and I'd ask that you respect that while we sort this out." The white-haired man in 2B lowered his Financial Times. Across the aisle, a woman in a silk scarf sat very still. Alexis held Brenda's gaze. "I completely agree that passengers in first class are entitled to a peaceful experience. I am a passenger in first class. I'd like mine to begin." The altercation, quiet as it remained, gathered its audience. A man in 1A removed his noise-canceling headphones. The woman in the silk scarf stopped pretending to read her magazine. In business class, 3 passengers craned forward, and standing at the entrance to first class, watching with arms loosely crossed, was Derek Whitmore. He hadn't gone to his seat. He'd come to watch the correction. When he saw Alexis wasn't moving, her composed authority visibly disconcerting Brenda, his posture shifted. He stepped forward. "Is there a problem here?" he said. Brenda looked at him with relief. Alexis looked without surprise. "This woman claims she's in first class," Derek said, to Brenda, not to Alexis, as if Alexis were merely a subject. "We're handling it," Brenda replied, her voice relaxing. "I mean, is there even a ticket?" Derek continued, "because I've been on these transatlantic flights, and sometimes people they'll wander up from the back." "She has a boarding pass," the woman in the silk scarf interjected, her clipped British voice not looking up from her magazine. "She showed it. The attendant didn't read it." The cabin registered this. The white-haired man in 2B folded his Financial Times with deliberate attention. Brenda straightened. "I'm handling this situation," she said to the woman. "Thank you." "Then handle it correctly," the woman retorted. Derek Whitmore moved further into the aisle, physically inserting himself into a situation he had caused. "Look," he said, with the patience of a man who believed his patience was charitable. "I don't want any trouble. I just want everyone to be in the right seat. That's not too much to ask." Alexis turned to him fully. She had been waiting for this moment, not with dread, but with the readiness of someone who'd spent years preparing. "And what," she asked, "made you believe I wasn't in the right seat?" Derek opened his mouth, then closed it. "You don't know me," Alexis said. "You've never spoken to me. You haven't seen my ticket. You walked into this cabin and looked at me and made a judgment, then reported it as fact. What was your evidence?" The cabin was silent. Derek started. "It's not I wasn't trying to—" "What was your evidence?" she repeated, same volume, same steadiness. He had no answer. He had never needed one before. Brenda cut in. "Sir, if you could return to your seat." "He's not in first class," said the white-haired man, "in 2B. Everyone looked at him. He set down his newspaper, looking at Derek Whitmore over his reading glasses with the mild, implacable authority of a man who had chaired many meetings and been underestimated at none. "I am Sir Gerald Pemberton, and I have been sitting in this cabin since pre-boarding, and this gentleman was not here, which means he has come from another section. He has no business in this cabin." Brenda's expression underwent a rapid, complicated rearrangement. Derek Whitmore's mouth opened again, but nothing came out. It was Priya, the young flight attendant who had greeted Alexis with warmth, who took matters into her own hands. She appeared from the galley with a tablet and scanner, walking directly to seat 2A. "Miss Monroe," she said, her eyes clear and uncomplicated, "may I scan your boarding pass?" "Please," Alexis said, holding it out. Priya scanned it. The tablet beeped, a single clean tone. She looked at the screen and nodded. "Seat 2A, first class, confirmed," she stated, handing the pass back. Then she turned to Brenda, a look on her face that was less anger than a decision to be honest in an expensive moment. "The manifest has Miss Monroe in 2A. She's been confirmed in this seat." Brenda said nothing. Priya turned to Derek Whitmore. "Sir, what is your seat number?" He paused, long enough to be its own answer. 3B. 3B is in the business cabin. This is the first-class cabin. I need to ask you to return to your seat now." He looked at the cabin, at the faces now watching him with discomfort and judgment. He seemed to understand that this was over. He turned without a word and went through the curtain. Priya looked at Brenda, whose face had gone pale. I'll need to note the situation," Brenda began. "Yes," Priya said. "I'll be making a full report to the senior cabin crew and the captain. I'd ask that you do the same." She turned back to Alexis. "Miss Monroe, I am so sorry for the disruption. Can I bring you anything?" "A cup of tea would be wonderful," Alexis replied. She started to turn, then stopped. "You handled that beautifully. I want you to know I saw the whole thing." Alexis looked at her, and something behind her eyes, which she'd been holding in place throughout the exchange, finally eased, just slightly. "Thank you," she said. 3 hours into the flight, somewhere over the North Atlantic, Alexis woke from a light sleep. She looked out at an ocean of clouds below and sky above, the boundary between them the color of pewter and rose, the most beautiful thing she'd seen in a long time. She'd slept, surprisingly. After Priya's tea, served in a proper ceramic cup with a shortbread biscuit, she'd reclined her seat, put on noise-canceling headphones, and pulled the cashmere blanket to her chin. The sleep was deep and dreamless. She woke slowly, like surfacing from water. She turned the reading light on low and reached for her notebook. She didn't write about what had happened. She wrote about London, the office, the team, the client dinner, the Georgian townhouse. She wrote a note to herself about calling her mother when she landed, and then, Grandma's watch made it, underlined once. She paused in her hand and thought. The hardest part wasn't Derek Whitmore. He was a recognizable type, a man whose assumptions about who belonged where had never been challenged. He caused this, but he wasn't the worst of it. The worst of it was Brenda. The worst was the institutional reflex a system designed to be neutral, turning toward the accuser and away from the accused, without examination, without evidence, without protocol. The worst was being asked to move before anything was checked. The worst was lower your voice when she hadn't raised it. She looked at the cloud ocean below, thinking of her mother working doubles, her grandmother's hands pressing hers, all the rooms she'd walked into that didn't know what to do with her. And then she thought of Priya with the tablet and the scanner, and the "you handled that beautifully." She thought of the woman with the silk scarf who said the attendant didn't read it. She thought of Sir Gerald Pemberton, who simply stated he has no business in this cabin. There were always people. She put her notebook away, ordered another tea, and watched the clouds shift like continents, rearranging themselves below. They were 4 hours from Heathrow when the senior cabin crew manager, Claudette Reed, a tall Jamaican woman who wore her seniority like a frame, appeared at seat 2A. "Ms. Monroe," she began, with formal posture and a warm, troubled face. "My name is Claudette Reed. I'm the senior cabin crew manager on this flight. I've been briefed on the incident during boarding, and I want to speak with you directly, with your permission." "Of course," Alexis said. Claudette sat in the jump seat across the aisle, a gesture Alexis later recognized as significant, treating this as a conversation between equals. "I want to start by saying I have reviewed your boarding pass confirmation, the passenger manifest, and the incident log submitted, and I want to be unambiguous. You are absolutely in the correct seat. Seat 2A, first class, has been assigned to you since the time of booking. There was no mix-up. There was no double booking." She paused. "There was an assumption." Alexis listened. "The assumption was wrong," Claudette continued. "The handling of it was wrong. You were approached without protocol being followed. Your boarding pass was not scanned before you were asked to move, and the passenger manifest was not checked. That is a procedural failure, and a serious one." Her eyes were steady and direct. "I am sorry, Ms. Monroe. I am genuinely sorry, both as a representative of this airline and personally. What happened to you should not have happened." The apology landed differently. It was specific, named the failure, did not hedge. "Thank you," Alexis said. "I also want you to know that the matter has been escalated. The captain has been notified. A formal incident report has been filed with British Airways Customer Relations, and both the passenger who initiated the complaint, Mr. Whittemore, and the crew member who handled it have been documented in the report. Mr. Whittemore has been informed that his behavior was inappropriate and that any further disruption will result in him being met by authorities on landing. He has not left his seat since." A small, clean satisfaction moved through Alexis. She allowed it. "As for the crew member," Claudette said carefully, "I am not in a position to detail the outcome during the flight, but I want you to know that this will be thoroughly reviewed, and it will not be allowed to pass." After Claudette left, the woman with the silk scarf, who was across the aisle in 2C, and whose name, Alexis had learned, was Catherine Holloway, a barrister specializing in employment law, leaned across. "She's good," Catherine said quietly. "That one. She means what she said." "I believe her." "Good." Catherine looked at her with appraising directness. "You were magnificent, by the way, in the actual original sense of the word." Alexis smiled, genuinely, and without guard, for the first time in hours. "My grandmother would have said I was just minding what was mine." "Smart woman, your grandmother." "She was the smartest person I've ever known." Catherine raised her water glass in the small toast. Alexis raised hers. The plane touched down at Heathrow at 7:42 a.m. local time, under a gray sky. The captain's voice came over the intercom, and the cabin began its ritual of unbuckling. Priya appeared at Alexis's pod as the plane taxied, holding a small envelope. "This is from the captain," she said, "and from me." Inside was a handwritten note on British Airways stationery. "Miss Monroe, on behalf of the flight crew and the airline, please accept our sincere apologies for the distress caused during your boarding. We hope the rest of your flight was comfortable. You will be hearing from our customer relations team within 24 hours. Below the captain's signature, in Priya's looped and careful handwriting, was a single line. "You reminded me why this job matters. Thank you." Alexis folded the note and put it in her tote, next to the heavy cardstock boarding pass. She was among the first to deplane, walking off the plane with her caramel leather tote on her shoulder, her grandmother's watch on her wrist, and her boarding pass in her pocket, toward the city that was about to become her next chapter. She did not look back. The phone call came 4 days later, while Alexis was at a table in her Marybone office, going over lease details. She stepped outside into the quiet Georgian courtyard and answered. The voice belonged to Diana O'Coffer, Director of Customer Relations and Standards for British Airways, precise and warm, with the deliberate cadence of someone practiced in difficult conversations. "Ms. Monroe," she began, "I want you to know that what I'm about to share reflects the outcome of a formal investigation. We take incidents of this nature extremely seriously, and I want to be transparent about what we've found and what we've done." Alexis sat on a stone bench. "Go ahead," she said. "Our investigation confirmed that you were in your correct seat at all times. The boarding pass and manifest were unambiguous. The complaint lodged by Mr. Whitmore was a personal assumption, and it should never have been acted upon without a manifest check." "No," Alexis said simply. "It shouldn't have." The crew member who handled the situation, Brenda Carmichael, violated multiple British Airways protocols. She did not scan or properly verify your boarding pass before asking you to move. She did not consult the passenger manifest. She failed to follow the standard procedure for seat conflicts, and she made comments that were condescending and professionally inappropriate. A long pause. "Ms. Carmichael has been suspended pending further review," Diana O'Coffer continued. "Following the conclusion of that review, she has been dismissed from her position with British Airways." Alexis received this quietly. "Whitmore has received a formal written warning and has been informed that any future conduct of this nature will result in a ban from British Airways flights. A copy of the warning has been added to his passenger file." "That's appropriate," Alex said. "We'd also like to offer you formal restitution. We will be refunding the full cost of your first-class ticket. We will also be offering you a credit equivalent to 2 round-trip first-class tickets to any British Airways destination, not as an exchange, but as an acknowledgement that no amount of credit corrects what happened, and we know that." She paused. "Additionally, British Airways will be making a donation, in your name if you wish, to an organization of your choosing that works on racial equity in professional spaces. We would like it to be meaningful, not merely symbolic." "I'll send you the name of the organization," Alex said finally. "Please do." Diana O'Coffer added, "Ms. Monroe, I want to say something that is not in our formal script. I have read the full incident report, including Priya's account and Ms. Holloway's witness statement. The way you conducted yourself, the dignity, the precision, the patience, that is not something you should have had to exercise. You should have been able to sit in that seat and open your notebook and not have a single thing interrupted." "I'm sorry that was taken from you. Alexis pressed her thumbnail gently against her grandmother's watch. "I appreciate that," she said. "I want you to know that Priya, the attendant who intervened, she should be recognized, whatever your process is for commendations. She did her job correctly when others didn't. That matters." "It does," Diana Okafor agreed. "We agree. She has already been formally commended, and that commendation is part of her permanent record." When the call ended, Alexis sat for a while on the bench. The London morning moved around her, pigeons crossing the courtyard, the distant sound of the city settling into her ears. She thought about the moment, 8 hours over the Atlantic, when Brenda had said, "Lower your voice," and she had replied, "I haven't raised it." She hadn't been performing composure in that moment. She was genuinely, quietly composed, not because she wasn't hurt, but because she had long understood that her composure was one of the things that was hers absolutely, something that could not be taken by assumption or condescension or the structural weight of someone else's bias. She was composed because she was her grandmother's granddaughter. She got up from the bench and went back inside. 3 weeks after the flight, an article appeared in The Guardian. It wasn't about Alexis Munro specifically. She had declined to speak to the press, a choice that required courage, because the story wanted to swallow her. But Catherine Holloway, the barrister in the silk scarf, had given a precise account to a trusted journalist. The resulting article was careful, factual, and devastating in the simple layout of facts. It described what happened on British Airways Flight 207 to Heathrow. A passenger in a confirmed first-class seat asked to move without verification, the procedural violations, and how an unsubstantiated complaint was immediately acted upon. It detailed the investigation, the dismissal, the restitution, and Priya's intervention. The article didn't name Alexis or Mr. Whitmore. It described the incident as a case study in assumption, procedural failure, and the dynamics of who gets believed and who gets questioned. It was shared thousands of times. British Airways issued a formal statement that same day, acknowledging the incident, confirming disciplinary outcomes, and announcing a new mandatory training program, Protocol First, focusing on bias awareness and procedural compliance. Alexis read the statement in her Marylebone office. She sent Diana Okafor a brief email. "Thank you. The program is the right step." She hit send, then turned back to her own work. That afternoon, her operations director, Claire Nakamura, 27 and meticulous, appeared in her office doorway with a mug of coffee and the expression of someone holding a question at the back of their teeth. "Can I ask you something?" Claire said. "You're going to either way," Alexis replied. Claire came in and sat down. "Were you scared on the flight when it was happening?" Alexis considered the question with the seriousness it deserved. "Not the way you mean," she said finally. "I wasn't afraid of the man or the flight attendant. I was tense. The way you're tense before you have to do something you've done before but that costs you every time." She folded her hands on the desk. "There's a specific fear that comes with those situations. It's not fear of the person, it's fear of the mechanism. Because you know that if you push back, you might be seen as the problem. You know that your tone will be scrutinized in a way theirs isn't. You know that there are people watching who haven't decided yet who to believe, and that their decision will be based on how you look and how you sound as much as what's true." She paused. "So yes, I was afraid of the mechanism. I handled it anyway." Claire was quiet for a moment. "How did you know what to do?" Alexis thought about her grandmother's hands, about years of rooms that didn't know what to do with her. She thought about the long, slow, costly education of being a black woman in a world that routinely makes you prove you belong. "I've had practice I didn't ask for," she said. Claire nodded. She didn't try to fix this with words, which Alexis appreciated. She just sat with it for a moment, and then she picked up her notebook. The lease counterproposal came in. "Do you want to go through it?" "Yes," Alexis said. "Let's go." 6 months later, on a cold February morning, Alexis boarded a British Airways flight at Heathrow for Atlanta, returning home for her mother's birthday. She carried a caramel-colored leather tote, a bouquet of hothouse tulips she bought at the airport, and her grandmother's watch on her wrist. The agent at the door scanned her boarding pass and smiled. "Welcome aboard, Miss Monroe. Seat 2A." She walked down the jetway. In the cabin, a flight attendant she had never seen before showed her to her pod. She stowed her bag herself, settled into the seat, ordered sparkling water, and opened her notebook to a fresh page, writing the date and destination. Outside the oval window, the London sky was the same pale pewter gray it had been the morning she arrived. She watched a plane lift from the runway, climbing steadily, the city falling away into abstraction. Alexis thought about what it meant to arrive somewhere and know you had earned your place there, not because someone had decided to let you in, but because you had built the door yourself and walked through it on your own terms. She thought about how it felt different now, sitting in this seat, than it had 6 months ago. Not because she was safer, but because she knew, with a clarity the flight had burned into her, exactly what she was willing to do when someone tried to take it. She uncapped her pen. She was going home, and from home she would come back, and she would keep coming back, because the work was not finished, and the world was not finished, and she was not finished, and she had things to build. The seat would be there when she returned. It would be there because it was hers, because she had paid for it and confirmed it and held it, quietly, precisely at cost, in the face of a system that wanted her to let it go. She began to write. Outside the window, the sky above London was beginning, around the edges, to turn gold. The story First Class by Anna highlights that while it's a work of fiction, the experience of being asked to justify your presence in a rightful space is a reality for Black women in professional and public contexts. It's a testament to the quiet strength required to hold your ground, revealing how well-intentioned procedures can become instruments of bias when assumptions replace protocol. It insists that justice, when it comes, should be specific and named, affirming that Alexis Monroe and those she represents earned their seat. If this story resonated with you, consider sharing it with someone who might also find value in its message.